consent. Distress binds us together. So you have a bunch of people who are hated by the same group of people, the anti-Semites. And they think, what do we have, what commonality do we have that they still hate us? We're not religious. We're not ethnic Jews. We don't eat cholent on Shabbos, or Grunkern, which the German Jews eat. We don't speak any Jewish language, not Yiddish and not Ladino. So it must be that there's some commonality between us, and so a new type of Jewish identity was forged based on anti-Semitism. Hitler becomes the rabbi, and I'm sure you've all heard it today. Well, Hitler didn't distinguish between a religious Jew and a non-religious Jew, so non-religious Jew is also a Jew. When last year I spoke in Seville for the Three Cultures Foundation, and I spoke about Jewish identity. A guy gets up during the questions session and he asks me, says, Rabbi, you can't dismiss Hitler's definition of a Jew. So I said, Hitler is the rabbi? Hitler decides who a Jew is? What do you mean? Because Hitler didn't distinguish, that means this. Hitler didn't distinguish between paternal lineage and maternal lineage either. That means I now obligated to consider Jews of paternal lineage Jewish? You see, but that's what happened. If you don't believe in the religion, and you don't believe in the religious identification of Jew, the religious definition of a Jew, you're stuck, and you still want to be Jewish. If you don't want to be Jewish, then fine. But if you still want to be Jewish, you're stuck trying to find a definition, which I always say is comparable to a person who doesn't believe in the number 2 and wants to figure out what 5 minus 3 equals. You can figure out as whatever you want, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Jabotinsky and Moses Hess said Jews are a race. Well, what are you going to do with the Sephardic Jews? So, who was it? The Zionist biologist and a faculty and a member of the Board of Trustees of Hebrew University, Redcliffe Nathan Salomon, said that Yemenite Jews are not Jews. Quote, they're black with an elongated skull. They're Arab half-castes. The true Jew is the European Ashkenazi. Because if Jew is a race, then why are Yemenite Jews Jews? Now, Theodor Herzl had a proof that Judaism is not a race because he took Israel Zangwill, who was kind of ugly. Herzl considered himself handsome. And he said, me and Zangwill, we can't be of the same race. He's a Negro. That's what he said, Herzl. He said it can't be the same race. So Judaism doesn't make sense. It should be a race. Now, is it a nationality? Well, like I said, Dennis Prager says it can't be a religion. He wants to say it's a nationality because you can have atheist Jews. Here's my question. Can you have Christian Jews? If Jews are anything but a religion, if they're nationality and ethnicity, a race, a tribe, why, just like you can have Muslims of any different race and other different ethnicities, why can't you have Jews of different, why can't you have Christians or Muslims of the Jewish ethnicity or the Jewish race? If you can have atheists, why can't you have Christian Jews? There is no viable answer to that question. In fact, Israel Zangwill, the guy who Herzl said is not a Jew because, well, he is a Jew and therefore Judaism can't be racial, said that when the Jews get a state, so then the Omar Mosque will be guarded by Jews who are Muslims, and the Holy Sepulchre will be guarded by Jews who are Christians. If Judaism is a nationality, which Zionism wanted to create, Zionism wanted to forge, and I use the word forge over here as counterfeit, the Jewish identity, change it from religion to nationality, then of course, why can't you have Jews who are of different religions? In fact, there was a Supreme Court case in Israel about a born Jew, a guy by the name of Brother Daniel. I call him Brother Daniel because he was a Carmelite monk. Up and applied to Israel under the law of return. There was a Supreme Court case in Israel that ruled that he is ineligible under the law of return, even though he was born Jewish. And according to Jewish law, he's Jewish, meaning he's obligated to fulfill the mitzvahs, even though he doesn't believe that because he accepted another religion. But Jewish religion says, no, you can't, not allowed to accept that other religion. Israeli law said that he's not Jewish under the law of return. Now, if you're an atheist, and rabbis asked this to Ben-Gurion, and he did not have an answer, an atheist is eligible to be a Jew under the law of return, but a Christian not. Both of them were born Jewish. One of them says, I believe in a God, but he's a Trinity. Or I believe in a God, and he's not a Trinity, but I believe in a Messiah, and he's Jesus. The other Jew says, I don't believe in any God, I don't believe in any Messiah. The second Jew, who doesn't believe in anything, is considered a Jew by birth, for whatever reason, but the Jew that has those beliefs and believes in Jesus is not considered a Jew by the law of return. This doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. Zionism wanted to transform Judaism from a religion or from religious doctrine to nationality. Can you be a Christian Jew? That's a question that they were unable to answer. But what they did was they took the entire Jewish doctrine and they transformed it into a nationalism. They took the Holy Land and made it into a political homeland. It's not. It's a holy land. In Hebrew, the word for homeland is moledes, which means the place the nation was born in. In fact, in the Israeli Declaration of Independence, it says here the nation was born. That is not true according to Judaism. We were born on Mount Sinai. I remember a nation coming out of Egypt was born on Mount Sinai, where the Bible says, Hayom hazeni yesa la'am, today you have become a nation, a people. But not according to Israel. They took the holidays and made them into political days and Jewish identity. Now, what Israel did, we're talking about identity. We're going to come back to the first question we had. What makes your identity an identity? Okay? Israel's the state of the Jewish people. Israel's the state of the Jewish people. The Jewish state. What they've done is they've taken a certain type of nationalism. We spoke about nationalism this morning. An extremely organic nationalism because they needed to create an identity that did not exist. They want to make a Jewish state, but that entire people doesn't exist. So they had to create it. So here's what they did. There are different types of nationalisms. Let's say American nationalism, liberal nationalism, where the only connection between me, I live in New York, and a guy that lives in California is the same as, let's say, we're members of a corporation. And we both agree to pay taxes and defend each other if we're attacked. Then you have the more organic nationalism, where an Englishman is intrinsically an Englishman, and there's an exclusivity for being English. Zionism took an exclusivity of Jewishness, but they did more than just say, okay, there's such a thing intrinsically as a Jewish national. Because, see, they had no choice. What they did was, it started with Ben-Gurion. He invented an ideology. He didn't invent it. He applied it to the Jews called mamlachtius, which in English translated would be stateism, which basically means that the interests of the people are not what the people are interested in. The interests of the people are defined by the interests of the state. What's good for the state is good for the people. The state is the focus of the values of the people and the primary source of people's symbols and the people's spirit. When the Germans wanted to give Israel money, reparations money for the Holocaust, people asked Ben-Gurion, how could you take money, blood money, from these Nazi murderers? And he said if the Holocaust victims were alive today, they would say, whatever's good for Israel, that's what we want. The interests of the Jewish people are no longer the interests of the Jewish people. The interests of the Jewish people are defined by the interests of Israel. More. What they did was they took a real Hegelian kind of nationalism, and they said that, well, you know this new thing that came out, that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism? Do you know why they think that? So Yair Lapid, he wants to be prime minister, one of the politicians in Israel. He explained, very simple. He said, because Israel is the essence of the spirit of the Jews. That means that if you don't like the Jews but you like Israel, you're good. If you don't like Israel but you do like the Jews, then you're an anti-Semite, because the Jews are not the Jews. The spirit of the Jews, the definition of who the Jews are, that's Israel. Okay? That's why they believe anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. All the other reasons won't make any sense. This at least makes sense. There's a method to this madness. It's mad. But they created this artificial identity, but they went even further. When they say that you can criticize Israel's policies, but you can't deny its right to exist, I have a question, and I've asked this to many Zionists. I have a policy that I want you to eliminate. You have a right to exist, but I have a policy I want you to eliminate. You claim to be the state of the Jews, the Jewish state. That's a policy. Eliminate that. You can exist, but that's a policy. You have a policy that you're the Jewish state. It's not even a policy, it's an illusion. Because according to the religious definition of Jewishness, there's no such thing as a Jewish state. They claim they represent all the Jewish people, the way America represents the Americans. Netanyahu wrote in one of his books that the reason why anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism is because just like you cannot want Japan not to exist, but say you're pro-Japanese, you can't want Israel to exist and say you're pro-Israeli. No, he didn't say Israeli. He said you can't want Israel to not exist and say you're pro-Jew. Israel is the representative of all the Jews. It's, by the way, look at this level of nationalism. It's the only country, not only today, in the history of the world, that claims to be the country, the representative, the nation state of people who are not its citizens, never was its citizens, don't plan on ever being its citizens, never lived there, have nothing to do with it, but because I'm born Jewish. Netanyahu claims he's my prime minister. Israel claims they're my state. There is no country in the world, so the Vatican, because they represent Catholics. But there is no country in the history of the world that ever claimed such a nationalism, such an organic type nationalism. There are Arab countries, but no Muslim country is a Muslim country in the sense that Israel claims to be a Jewish country. No Muslim country claims that they're the nation state of all the Muslims. Israel claims to be the nation state of all the Jews. In the history of the world, there was never such a nationalism. And what they claimed in their identity, the original question we asked, and I'll end with this, the original question we asked is, where's the me? We have more time? 5 minutes, okay. We asked, where is the me? What is that characteristic of me that makes me me? Well, if I tell a Zionist that Israel can exist, just stop being the Jewish state. Well, no, you just eliminated Israel. You see, what they did was they took a policy. And they said, this policy is my identity. They took my question, what makes me me? And they answered it. What makes Israel Israel? Well, we could stop the occupation and still be Israel. We could change, laws about religion and even not religion, maybe even the separation of church and state and still be Israel. But once that policy that we're the Jewish state is gone, we're no longer Israel. Our identity is erased. So what they did was, it's a trick. You take a policy and you say, no, this policy is my identity. And if you don't like this policy, you want to destroy me. Say, I'm a Met fan.